So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting on September the 28th, 2024. This meeting is being called for the purpose of holding an education session pertaining to community safety zones and municipal speed cameras. I will now call on Will Short, Regional Clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
And we have regrets from Councillor Deutschmann, Councillor Erb, Councillor Verbanovic, and Councillor Liggett. Thank you, Chair.
I would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and the Channotton people. In doing so, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we are engaging in collectively today, and also on my own personal relationship to this land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen, and I am continually grateful that the community continues to share their stories and concerns with me. As well as chair of the region, I know that I carry a large responsibility to ensure that it is not just myself as an individual listening and acting, but that the government, as a government, we are listening and creating action in the community. I'm offering this acknowledgement as one of the many actions I am personally and the region largely is taking on our journey towards reconciliation. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Thank you very much. Yes, there are no declarations, and we are all in blue today. Presentation, we have an education session, community safety zones, and municipal speed cameras. And we will move, this will be the main item for today's special council meetings. I will call on Doug Spooner, Acting Commissioner, Transportation Services, to introduce the presentation. Welcome, Doug. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Regional Council, and thank you for the opportunity today. I come to you today wearing three different hats. As introduced as the Acting Commissioner of Transportation for the region, as a resident of the region, and also as a father of school-aged children. Council, I work in transportation because I like helping people get where they're going. I care deeply about the journey. And I believe that that journey should be easy and that it should be safe. And that my friends and family that walk, wheel, cycle, drive, take transit, or use a horse and buggy should also feel safe while they're taking that journey. Council, 72% of trips in our region are taken by car. That means a quarter are not. And 30 to 40% of our residents don't drive. So, the following is how a municipal speed camera program can help us be safe and feel safe. Oh, I haven't advanced a single slide. Next slide, please. One more time. Thank you. Today we're going to cover why we should lower vehicle speeds, the current program that's in place, our plans for expansion, an understanding of community safety zones and what they add to this program, how we plan to communicate this broadly across the region, and finally, opportunity for questions. Next slide, please. Council, you're responsible for a lot of services that the region delivers. If I or any of my fellow commissioners came to you with a program that could increase the survivability of an incident from 15 to 70%, we would all support it. And here we are. You can see on the chart, there's a considerable amount of time when someone's eyes decide they need to brake, to when their brain can then tell their foot to actually brake. And that increases over as we increase speed. Council, I struggle with this slide. It's a terrible representation of what can happen. But it's important, and it's true, and it's some of the science that underpins this program. Next slide, please. So the question is speeding a problem here? Well, these are real incidents from our pilot program that's out now. And remembering back to the last slide, at 60 kilometers an hour, survivability is 5%. At 80, 91, 94, 111, 121 kilometers an hour, there is no statistic that I could share with you. I, as you do, receive a lot of emails and phone calls seeking solutions to slowing down cars in our neighborhoods. And Council, I think we have the right tool here. Next slide, please. This isn't just a local challenge. It's a global challenge. Excessive speeding is a factor in 1 in 4 fatal collisions around the world. And it's been shown that speed cameras reduce collisions by 50%, and they reduce serious and fatal injuries by 44%. Sick Kids Hospital recently completed a review and evaluation of the City of Toronto's speed camera and community safety zone program and found a 45% reduction in speed when those programs are in place. Next slide, please. Let's talk about how we're doing through our pilot program. Next slide. We're doing really well. We've got 16 cameras locations, we've got 4 active cameras, and we've got significant results. People driving the speed limit in the areas where we have municipal speed cameras is up 63%. These cameras are effective in locations where they exist and also in those where they may exist. Next slide, please. Council, we've also learned a lot through this process of the pilot. We've learned that a local processing center would increase efficiency. We've learned that using the Provincial Offences Act has significant limitations in terms of capacity, wait time, and the actual process that we go through. And we've also learned, based on that 63% in the last slide, that all schools in our region could benefit from this program. Next slide, please. Council, we've been on a journey together. In 2020 was the first motion to explore a speed enforcement camera pilot. In 2021, we launched the first cameras in that pilot program, and we had an additional motion to expand the program to cover the entire region, including our area municipal partners. In 2022, we were asked to investigate a local processing center. In 2023, we sought approval of the administrative penalties program. We then were given direction to seek expansion to all school zones by 2028. And we received approval of the business case for the local processing center. And again in 2024, we received budget approval to build the team that is ready to put this program in place. Next slide, please. And Council, I'll now talk to you about where we go next. The overall plan is to grow the number of cameras by 36 deployed across the region each year from now until 2028. Each year, we will come back and report on the program, its successes, its challenges, and the locations that our area municipal partners and ourselves have put forward for next year's camera locations. And then we will all work together, as we have to date, to implement them. Next slide, please. Council, part of this plan uses a new local processing center and the administrative penalties program. And I'm going to use the next slide to tell you why that is a critical piece of this program. Please, next slide. Today, in the City of Waterloo, the City of Kitchener, or the City of Cambridge, our residents will have experience with an administrative penalties program because that is how we manage parking tickets. We also believe we can significantly reduce the amount of time needed to actually process. Fractions of the amount of time for somebody to understand what has just happened. We also have the ability to cancel or vary tickets based on individual circumstance and financial hardship. We do not have this in the previous system. And finally, we can introduce new virtual, phone, and in-person locations for folks who wish to address and challenge the ticket to do so. And finally, an administrative penalties program is scalable. We could add other tickets and charges, such as red light cameras, school bus stop arms, We could also, in time, add additional staff in the event of higher volumes. We could also add less. The program is entirely scalable as it is in our control. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving from a Provincial Offences Act to an administrative penalties program is good. It gives us local control, it happens faster, and it gives us greater ability at a local level for those with financial hardship to receive relief. But the fines do increase. And I understand, Council, that I could have been more explicit on this one through the process. But when the province gave us the ability to have an administrative penalties program, it also aligned the fines for that program with community safety zones and construction zones. So in fact, we have community safety zones across the region today. This is the fine that exists today. I will also note the provincial offences fines in the middle column have not changed in decades, to the point that some municipalities, such as Windsor, have requested that the province align the POA and the administrative fines together, and that they increase them. Next slide, please. Now, the goal is road safety, and one of the outcomes is fine monies collected. The real goal of this program is not to need community safety zones or to need speed cameras. Any monies collected that exceed operating costs will be placed into the Road Safety Reserve and will fund safety projects such as the Township Traffic Calming Initiative, our roundabout pilots that we spoke about last month, and roadway redesigns that could eliminate the need for a community safety zone. So, we do believe tickets will increase in the short term, and then will decrease over time as driver behavior changes, as we all slow down in the places that we need to slow down. Council, this is another place where we will come back and report annually on the health of the road, the Road Safety Reserve Fund, and the projects that we intend to apply those monies to. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a bit of a sense of how this all works administratively. Let's have a quick video to show how we will experience this in our region, please. Maybe a bit choppy, my apologies.
We're on Westmount Road in Kitchener to learn about community safety zones, what they mean, how to recognize them, and what drivers need to know to ensure they're following the rules of the road. Community safety zones begin with a sign letting you know you're entering an area where there's more pedestrians, places like schools, childcare centers, parks, retirement homes, or sports fields. This sign is a cue to drivers that you need to slow down and pay closer attention. In community safety zones, fines are increased to deter speeding and protect those walking, biking, or rolling. This sends an important message about how critical it is to follow the posted speed limit. There will be another sign further along to indicate the point where the community safety zone ends. At this point, the speed limit may change. Remember, the speed limit still applies, but regular fines return. In some school zones, an active camera detects vehicles traveling over the limit. Take extra caution. A ticket will be issued to license plate owners of vehicles traveling above the limit in this area. In Waterloo region, speed cameras operate only in school zones, which is a stretch of road 150 meters on either side of the school property line. Some municipalities, including Barrie, Guelph, Brampton, York Region, and Ottawa, have designated all school zones as community safety zones as a best practice. Throughout the region, there are roads near schools that have high pedestrian traffic, but don't fit the Highway Traffic Act definition of a school zone. This means they don't qualify for the added protection speed cameras and higher fines provide. By designating these areas as community safety zones, we can help ensure all schools in the region are equipped with the same protection to make our roads safer for pedestrians walking, rolling, and biking.
Council, I must note, as we're having a safety conversation, that residents, when they pass these signs, should not stare at them with the intensity of what we showed on video. And I will also note that those videos were captured from the passenger seat of the vehicle, not the driver's seat. Council, we talked a little bit about community safety zones at our last session. It's an area where we need to slow down. Sometimes it's a school zone, and it can be applied in other areas. That's the important part of step one, the eligibility assessment. Community safety zones give us the ability to place cameras outside of school zones, at parks, at community centers, hospitals, daycares, or seniors' residences. All places where we gather, all places where we need a little bit of safety. They're also used where the speed limit is less than 60 kilometers an hour, so that they could have the impact that I showed you on that chart. Once we've established that an area could benefit from a community safety zone, we then do step two, which is a points-based risk factor assessment. That looks at daily volumes of travelers, cars, trucks, pedestrians, cyclists. It looks at traffic speeds, which, as you can imagine, is not always the posted speed. It looks at collision history, and it looks at another number of other variables that tell us that that is the right place for a community safety zone. Next slide, please. Okay, but we have school zones. Why do we need community safety zones? It's not for the camera. The cameras are allowed in both school and community safety zones. There's actually two reasons. The first, as the video mentioned, it's to fill a gap in the ability of the school zone regulation to provide the protection needed. The school zone covers 150 meters from the vehicular entrance. So you could imagine a school where most of the students don't exit out of the main vehicular entrance, where they would use a back pathway or a walkway, and they would end up on a street with a high volume of students with very little additional protection. The next is for important community spaces. Community safety zones help us add a layer of protection to get people where they're going safely and feeling safely. Next slide, please. Council, it's critically important that everybody in our region is aware of this program at its time of launch. Next slide, please. We've got 4 pillars in our communication plan. The first is to educate, a session much like today, around the benefits to our community of a program like this. We also want to build awareness about the new locations that cameras will be. We do not want this to be a surprise. The intent is not tickets, the intent is slower driving speeds. We need to inform people about how this works, how they will pay or challenge a ticket. And finally, we need to partner. We've got a lot of partners on this program: school boards, student transportation, Waterloo Region Police Services, our area municipal partners, community groups. This program is better for our partnership, and we need to keep hitting on that partnership along with those first 3 pillars. Next slide, please. Council, we've got a multi-pronged approach to raising awareness. We have to be targeted to local areas where cameras are. We also need to communicate broadly to everybody in our region, and potentially farther to those who travel in and around our region on a daily basis. We also need to consider everybody in our region and how they communicate. We have a lot of languages spoken in our region, and people choose various different ways to receive this information. And finally, prior to launch right now, during the program, we need to sustain that awareness so that people know the areas where we are asking for a little bit of extra focus for our kids and neighbors. Next slide, please. Council, we're going to publish the location of every camera and their performance. This program isn't intended to be punitive. It's not intended to be hidden. It's not intended to be secretive. We simply want people to slow down, be aware of the community locations where their friends and neighbors need a little bit of extra support, and to help make our region safer, because as I mentioned earlier, while I am very passionate about the journey, most are very passionate about the destination, and we need to get there. Council, thank you for the opportunity. I'm welcome to any questions, open to any questions, please.
Thanks so much, Doug. That was really thorough. And we have some questions. Councillor Hunick, go ahead.
Through the chair. Thank you, Commissioner Spooner, for the thorough and multimedia presentation. Very entertaining, very informative. I think that I'm getting some of my messages confused because I've heard that we cannot alter the fines because they are set by the province. And then I heard from you just recently, just in this presentation, that we have the ability to alter or cancel tickets. And so can you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah. Through you, Chair, great question, and thank you for the opportunity. So We don't set the fines. The signs are set in the Highway Traffic Act, and those are set in two separate schedules, one for provincial offenses and one for administrative penalties. So the fines as issued are the fines. Where we get the opportunity is with the local processing center and the ability to talk to somebody local who can then make a decision about financial hardship. So that is not an option under the Provincial Offences Act. That is an option under the administrative penalties. So you're right in both counts. We do not control the fines, but we control the application of those fines and relief later on in the process.
Oh, thank you. That's so helpful. Okay, another question that I have. Like you, I am for community safety for all. That's one of the reasons that I ran for council, and it's one of the things that I intend to sit or stand behind. And so, but some of the pushback that I've gotten about the speed enforcement program is that it's about a money grab, and that if we do the same speed limit at 24/7, it's pointless because there's not as much traffic at different times of day. Can you talk about the value of consistency versus the value of changing the fines based on the time of day or time of the week?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you again for the question. So I would reframe the first part. I don't believe this is a discussion about cameras versus fines. I believe it's a discussion about cameras versus convenience. Slowing down and driving the speed limit means you will not be issued a ticket or a fine at any point.
Amen.
The time of day question is a good one. In the pilot program, we have a camera in Wilmot that seasonally changes the times that it is on. And a councillor asked on Monday night when I was at that council session if we could turn that off. The reason is consistency is important. We cannot predict when our community facilities are going to be busy or not. Schools are not just busy between 9 and 3. They're community centers. They host events in the evening, all sorts of things, and all our facilities do. And so when we're seeking consistency, as we saw through the pilot, the presence of 16 camera locations resulted in the behavior change, despite the fact that there were only 4 cameras in those locations. So I think on the slide I showed with the number of speeding infractions, they were all across the day. And I wouldn't want to be in a position where we suggest that the safety of our community changes by time of day, because I don't have the ability to predict when those locations will be busy.
And just a follow-up comment, if I may. Like you, I don't think it should change based on time of day, because regardless of the volume of people running across the road or rolling across the road, anything can happen at any time. And I think the transparency of this program, the fact that each of the locations is going to be public knowledge, is it's an asset, and I'm excited to vote for this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And Chair, may I just add a quick comment at the end, because that map that I showed you, while it appears online, our current camera locations have already made it in as points of interest in Google and Waze and all of the others. So if you turn on a GPS while you're driving, you will know as you enter, both by the signage and by your GPS. Thanks.
Good. So it's always a good sign when that kind of information goes viral, right? Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. So piggybacking on what Councillor Hunick said, so the Provincial Offences Act for 15 kilometres over is 5285, and ours would be at 9825, which is not double. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So there's some administrative costs layered on in both of those situations. Effectively, the fine revenue in either of those situations would move from $30 to $60. So it is a doubling of the fine, the administrative piece that gets added over top. So when we say doubling, you're right, $52.50 does not become $98.25, but the fine monies does double.
Okay, so, and when you say 15 kilometers over, so if you're going 1 kilometer over, are you still getting double that fine? It's because it says 15 kilometers over is 98.25.
Yes. Through you, Chair, and thank you for the question, and sorry, it took me a minute to. So yes, in all scenarios, there is a schedule of fines for provincial offenses, and there is a schedule of fines for administrative penalties program, and in each of those, I use the 30-60 example, but they would double in each of those.
And double, so if I'm doing 2 kilometers over, I'm going to get double regardless of whether, and then when I hit the 15 plateau, it goes to another level, right? Or whatever the next level is.
Yeah, in each, it's just the schedule moving from one number up to a higher number. So
Okay, and in your videos, it was quite good, but you showed a child riding their bike right through a stop sign, not looking. Part of the problem is that we have no longer teach our children to stop, look, and listen, or even adults. And you can see that everywhere you go, in parking lots and everything. Nobody watches and assumes the pedestrian's always right. I think a really good campaign on "you could be right but dead" is a good point. Another thing I was going to talk about was I was speaking to one of the other councillors, driving down Huron Road, so you've made a 4-lane there, and I do 40, not a problem. So a delivery truck is in the right-hand lane, and I'm in the next lane over, and a kid walks out in front of the truck. The truck actually wasn't making a delivery, but they were allowing for a child to pass. If I wasn't going slower, I would have hit that child. This won't solve problems like that. See, this is not the be-all and end-all, and I'm afraid people will see it that way. There's a lot wrong with when we do 4-lane roads, we create a whole nother level of problems for pedestrians and children, all ages pedestrians, unless we create, and there are several crosswalks on Huron Road there, but in this one case, they didn't do a crosswalk. And even at a crosswalk, sometimes they need to be lit high enough so that you can see the flashing lights because of the vehicles on the other side. And the 24/7, I still have a hard time with that. I can see they don't have to be on from maybe 11 at night till 3 or 4 in the morning, and I have no problems with them being on the other times. But I don't think they have to be 24/7. I mean, some people working shifts and coming home, they may not be paying as much attention to their speed because they're just tired. But, so that's another thing. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Redmond. Thanks for the presentation and the passion with your presentation, Doug. You can tell you're enthusiastic about this. And I do have a couple of questions. And one is regarding that doubling of fines. In comparison to, I want to say, other communities, is this kind of status quo in terms of the fines that we'd see in other communities who have this program implemented? If you could just answer that.
through your chair, great question. Yes, this is entirely consistent with other municipalities using the administrative penalties program, which are all of them using community safety zones and the speed cameras. So this is status quo for a program of this type.
Okay, and then just in terms of the equity piece around this, so I think that's addressed. So if we're running this program all across consistent with every other kind of municipality that has it, that's kind of the equality piece across. With this program, if I'm understanding it correctly, by having the individual be able to, state if they're in financial hardship or whatever the extenuating circumstance is, you're able to address the inequity that way, and you're dealing with it on a case-by-case needs basis. And that wouldn't exist under the current program.
Through you, Chair, that is entirely correct. The administrative penalty program means that it's a local regional staff member doing that initial intake and that initial conversation about that, and obviously the financial hardship component. I think the important thing to think about here is that the Provincial Offences Act fines have not changed in decades, and so it's very likely that those will move in the near future to align with the administrative penalties program. So.
Okay, and then just one final question, Chair Redmond. In terms of just the rolling out this program and all of that, I just want to confirm in terms of legal and that, that's all been part of this process as well, with the provincial, what they're requiring, and making sure that we're following within kind of the legal standards of implementing this program.
Through you, Chair, absolutely. So our project team includes folks from our legal team as well as our transportation team and a few others, but it is absolutely, this is the legal framework for a program of this type.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation and for your passion. I like to see that. A couple of questions. I was speaking to someone about this program a few days ago, and they were asking about staffing and why we need staff maybe at all. I understand we need some staff, but why it's not completely automated. Can you speak to that? I think you maybe said that to us before, but could you do it again?
Yeah, through you, Chair, thank you for the question. So the speed enforcement element, that upfront camera is entirely automated. There is a person who reviews every one of the photos and the potential fine before issuing it so that we make sure we're accurate, the camera hasn't captured something. And then there are also people through, if the ticket is challenged or it needs a review, there are staff who review that ticket as well. So there is a human component on the back end that I think is important. And when we talk about some of the equity elements and the ability to reduce the fines, that's where the person becomes important.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad AI hasn't taken over everything. Another question for you, and I'm not sure if we've ever talked about this around this table or not, but maybe we have. So we're looking till 2028 for the complete rollout. Right now we have 4 cameras and 16 spaces. Why don't we put out all the spaces and just add the cameras and rotate them around? Because you've seen good results.
Yeah, it's through you, Chair. It's a really good question. So the rollout plan, again, with the goal being that we don't need these cameras eventually. So the 16 existing as of December will become permanent. We found some significant challenges in moving the cameras around. On that last slide I showed with the map, it would have had a certificate. So we actually publish an ongoing updated certificate to show that the camera is accurate, it's been calibrated correctly. So moving those cameras around, we have to recalibrate every time. So the idea is to place them permanently. So again, the plan for this year, 16 new camera locations in school zones in November, and then the conversion of those rotating ones to permanent. Just a policy choice on how to implement and really saving on the operating costs of moving them.
But we're losing 4 years, 3 years, in the process of not sort of carrying on with that. Is it that difficult to not, you know?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It's if the question, I think I've got it, is by the end of the year we'll have 32 cameras. Why not rotate them through 175 sites?
Right.
I think I've got an interesting answer to that, which is we're actually changing camera technology. And so the way that it exists today, where you see the big box and the camera can be switched out inside, in future will become pole mounted. So it actually becomes more challenging. It's not flipping a camera in and out of a box. It's actually climbing up and having a boom truck to go up and mount the camera. So look, I'm in your hands, Council, on this one. If we want to scale the program differently, if we want to use rotational, we've designed this to be what we believe is the most efficient application, but it's an interesting idea.
Okay, I'll leave that one for now.
I think we're getting back up here, Councillor Schatz.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Hi, Council, and through your chair. As a reminder, I'm Daryl Spencer, the manager of transportation engineering. Just around that expansion part, one of the challenges is actually the construction of the sites, and that actually takes a long time. We have to energize the site, so bring power to the sites. We have to locate them, and that is a lot of work. So even to get, for example, the first 16 sites we built out took over a year to actually complete the construction of those sites. So part of the challenge in actually setting up those 175 sites is we expect it'll take 4 years to just do the construction piece of it as well. So that's another challenge with kind of building it all out now.
It would be interesting to know what it would cost. Yeah. I understand that it's time consuming, but you know, what would the cost be and what would the benefit potentially be?
Happy to look at it.
And if I could have one more.
Absolutely.
Or maybe 2 more questions. Digital speed signs. Have you looked at those in conjunction with the speed cameras?
Through you, Chair. So this is one of the pieces I'm most excited about. You would have noted when I talked about the Road Safety Reserve, the very first item at the top was the Township Traffic Calming Initiative. So that's an initiative in partnership with our township partners, looking at how do we reduce speeds heading into settlement areas. So the team has met twice. They've got an initial scope of work. We're now going to develop the application of what sorts of tools will help in those. The speed signs are obviously a major component in that. They're really effective. And so they'll be considered as part of that and then funded through the Road Safety Reserve.
I'm really excited about that, and I think it should be easy and quick because you don't have to build anything. And just one more thing, on the communication piece, you talked about communicating with neighbors, but really a lot of the people that drive through those zones aren't neighbors, they're others. So I think you've got a complete communication package, but I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Doug and team, for the presentation. And thanks for making time to come back to continue to explain this to us, since it started in 2020 and we're still talking about it, which is great that. But also a lot of staff time and a lot of conversation has gone into this. But my question is, or I've got a couple of questions. So with the school zone implementation schedule, will that, if we add the community safety zone obligations, will that keep our schools safety zone implementation on track, or are these going to kind of bump into each other? And like, are we still going to be able to do the school safety zone?
Yeah, through you, Chair, great question. So the initial approach is to work with our area municipal partners to identify the 175, we know the school locations, and then just to ensure that they need the additional support of a camera and also of a community safety zone. The plan is to implement them at the same time. So there's a few locations around the region that are in plan for November. You would note driving by them, there is already a school zone in place, and then there's a municipal speed camera coming soon and a community safety zone sign. So it's not more work. We're already focused on that area of the community. It's just an implementation at the same time.
That's good to hear. Thank you for clarifying that. And then if a municipality decides to opt out, like how would that work with the automatic speed enforcement if they decided not to do a community safety zone? Like how would that, and I'm not suggesting that Waterloo wants to opt out. We very much want to opt in, but I'm just curious because that was raised around this horseshoe.
Yeah. Through you, Chair. Another great question. So the plan to date has been developed by a working group with all of our area municipal partners who have all put forward locations. If we arrived in a situation where a municipality chose not to participate, the region is still the authority on the regional roads. So we could still put cameras and community safety zones on regional roads. Area municipal partners could opt out, and at that point we could either choose to redeploy those cameras that were intended for local roads, or we're scalable, so we could not acquire them. So
Okay.
we've got options on the back end.
Okay, which I really appreciate hearing, because in my mind that means if you want to move ahead with it, we move ahead with it. If you don't want to move ahead with it, great. We'll get more in other locations more quickly. So there really is no reason based on that and based on some of the other information that you've provided that we wouldn't say, let's just go ahead with this project.
Through you, Chair.
As council directed from 2020 and led up to last year,
Yeah.
in my mind.
Through you, Chair, that is correct. There are a number of tools in our toolbox for road safety. Community safety zones and cameras are one, road redesign is another. There's a number of tools. So we believe this is the right one based on the information I shared with you. But, you know, our partners could disagree and say this is not the approach, and we'd encourage them to take different approaches with road design and others. So that's a...
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification, appreciate it.
So Doug, I'm going to go to a second round, and it is no comment on the thoroughness of your presentation. It's just the engagement of council to learn more. Councillor Hunick, go ahead.
Through the chair, as council and staff discuss and discern the safest solution for all, I just want to comment on the fact that there may be times of day wherein people are more tired or not paying as much attention. I think is precisely why consistency over the 24-hour period, 7 days a week, is helpful.
Through you, Chair, may I just quickly respond? There are two modes that drivers take that we are well aware. There is an entirely tuned in, fully aware state, and there's also sometimes when you're on automatic and you suddenly arrive home and you go, oh, that was fast. It's the second one that is of concern, which is why community safety zones and cameras are effective, because there's signage, it reminds you, oh, this is an area to pay special attention. So it is the intent, is to make, you know, a little bit of extra awareness in the areas where we need.
And if it's always the same, then you don't have to think as hard. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through Chair. So how are we going to prevent someone from cutting these things down like in Wilmot? But I heard about the poles. Are they high enough on the poles that they won't be able to take them down?
Yeah, through you, Chair, very good question. And for awareness, we have one of our cameras in the pilot program that has been cut down a number of times is in an active WRPS investigation, so that is real. It's also a global phenomenon. There is a period of resistance following the implementation of speed cameras. There's a number of strategies on this. I shared one earlier. The pole mounting is a bit of a different application. But the thing that's important for council is we lease these cameras. So there is not a significant direct cost to us. Now, there is in future when we renew a contract, and there's the risk in there for our vendor, but the immediate cost of that repair is not borne by the region. So it's an important piece for us. We will repair the camera. We will get it back up and running.
But it'd be nice if we could send the message that you can't take these down. The other, did I go na 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 na? Anyways, the other thing I was going to ask is, so let's assume we have all these cameras up, and a police situation happens. Will they have access to our cameras to decide if they can find the certain vehicle they're looking for?
I'm going to phone a friend, if I may.
My answer I'm hoping for is yes.
Yeah, through you, Chair. No, actually, the cameras don't take active video or photographs. They literally only photograph cars that are observed above the speed limit. So we have had inquiries from the police about specific cars, and maybe they were speeding through at a certain time, and we are able to kind of find that data, but it's not really helpful for any other sort of surveillance.
Yeah, and that's all I meant. If the car's speeding through and they looking for a certain license plate, they have access. That's all I care about. Thank you.
So, Councillor Foxton, I think that I see in your future a TikTok presentation when we pass this. Councillor James.
Through you, Chair Redmond, just a question about the revenue in this road reserve fund. I want to make sure that revenue that's generated would be going into road safety initiatives, be it through the townships. Would that include the area municipalities like Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge? Just confirm that in terms of revenue and how we see that all throughout the region with investment into the safety.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Great question, thank you. So by nature of the region running the administrative penalty programs, the fine monies must be received by the region. So we will have to intake. We've been in discussions with our partners about how best to do this. At this point, I don't believe it's formulaic. I actually believe it's what we do normally when we talk about road safety, is we talk about hotspots and we talk about the places that need support, and then we can apply those monies there. So every dollar above the cost to operate goes into the road safety reserve and will be spent on projects to address road safety.
Okay, and just confirming road safety throughout the region.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Please.
Doug, are you saying, I was listening to Guelph and other places where best practice has been that there's a community safety zone that corresponds with a school safety zone. Is that what we're looking at proposing?
Through you, Chair. Good question. Yeah, and if you think about it quite simply, think back to that example where the main vehicular entrance is the school safety zone, right? We get 150 meters on either side of the entrance. And then if you think about a school that was wrapped in other roads, we can grow the bubble. So we can expand with the community safety zones, the areas of protection. The school zone's pretty limited in the Highway Traffic Act. Community safety zone gives us more area to cover.
And can you also just refresh our memories? I think it's in the report, but there may be people watching on YouTube or live streaming that didn't read the report. The POA system, as we currently have, does not have the capacity to increase for the kind of regime that we're hoping for, and that's why we're going to apps?
Through you, Chair. That is correct. The system is at capacity, and the cost to grow on the POA side is much more expensive than it is to implement an administrative penalties program, and it brings all those other benefits of local processing, the ability to reduce fines.
So thank you very much for a very thorough briefing. I see no other questions, so I would now entertain a motion to go into closed session where we will deal with receiving information regarding potential litigation, the security of regional property, and labor relations relating to identified risks. Moved by Councillor Foxton, second by Councillor Shantz. Please use your e-scribe to cast your ballot. Colleagues, that is carried. I would now entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Williams. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. I will see everybody in the Waterloo County room.